And welcome to Hidden History Stories from the Secret City. I'm Keith McDaniel, along with my co host, Ray Smith. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Keith.
Uh,
How's the day for you?
it's good. It's good. Woke up early this morning. I guess that's what
Oh,
happens when you get old. You know,
yeah.
you know, 3 or 4 o'clock rolls around and I'm wide awake.
Oh, oh,
But
that ain't good.
so I've had a full day already. But
I see.
I understand. All right. Well,
All
we're
right.
going to we're going to have part two of our interesting uh, podcast about alumni from Oak Ridge High School with Benita. Good morning,
Yeah.
Benita.
Good morning.
Yeah. And we're glad to have Benita here with us. She's going to do a second part today, as you mentioned, and then we'll have a third part that will come up the next time we're on, and that will have all of her presentation about the individuals who are graduates from Oak Ridge High School that she's done research on, and many of them have had significant careers and made significant accomplishments. And we're glad to have you here with us today, Benita, to share more about the graduates from Oak Ridge High School. So let's go ahead and get started, okay?
All right. Well, let me
Now,
first say thank you for this voice, and what an honor it is to talk about the 1970s, maybe a little longer into the 80s today. This is my beginning decade, the 1970s, and I've been fortunate not only to collect these stories, but to reunite with some really, really special students of mine, right? Not everyone you will hear from will be mine, but certainly from the 70s, they mostly were. So our first alumni is from the Oak Ridge High School class of 1972, though she exited early in 1971, accepting early admissions at Emory in Atlanta. Deirdre Barrett was the daughter, for Oak Ridgers who know the story. You going to go back to Deirdre, Ray? Yeah.
yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
It moved on.
She was the daughter of a city councilman, John Barrett, whom some Oak Ridgers may remember. She wanted to mention that because she was especially proud of her father's involvement in the city council during the time of the civil rights struggle, starting in the 50s in Oak Ridge because of the desegregation of the grades 7 through 12 in the Oak Ridge schools. But also he was an advocate for the desegregation of community facilities. And she remembered and wanted to honor him that way. She also mentioned in Memories of Oak Ridge that she absolutely loved and attended everyone she could attend, the foreign film showings at the Arts Center. And she said that passion has followed her for the rest of her life. She fondly remembered her first school, Willowbrook School, and then later when they moved, Linden School. And here's, what she said about it. At Willowbrook, there was an early emphasis on writing in the Oak Ridge schools. I was later heavily involved with journalism at Oak Ridge High School, which she observed, it shaped my future life as an author, editor, professor, and speaker. I first saw Deirdre after she left Oak Ridge High School on the Dr. Phil show. And that's where I got updated as to her many accomplishments. She is considered the world-renowned dream expert, a dream analyst, I should say. She has a PhD in evolutionary psychology. She's been at Harvard Medical School since 1986. She calls her studies Enigmas of Human Behavior. She's authored 4 books, and as I said earlier, considered a world-renowned expert on dreams, which she calls dreams, thinking in a different biochemical state. one of her books, The Committee of Sleep, I will hold it up here in case that will show up okay, is all about dreaming and documented evidence of how dreams have greatly enhanced civilization, from artists to scientists to athletes, etc. Interesting read. She published that a while back. Her latest book is called Supernormal Stimuli, and it covers such self-control topics as TV, these TV bingers, I guess, video games, pornography, junk food, etc., human addictions that she addresses.
Well, I have her Committee of Sleep and have thoroughly enjoyed reading that. I was not aware of the book you just mentioned, but that Committee of Sleep caused me to think more than anything I've read about dreams. She did a really good job with that book.
Indeed. And she got high praise from some pretty important people on it. You know, I knew before she spoke, when she was in Oak Ridge, the Oak Ridge Public Schools Education Foundation, that what she had to say about science and dreams was in place, because personally, I have gone to sleep many a night with a problem I couldn't solve and wake up the next morning and it's done. So that had to be that different biochemical state, right? Working it out, right? Likewise for you, Ray.
Yes, I agree. It's amazing to me what a good night's sleep will do when you've gone to bed with a problem and you wake up in the morning and it's at least in a different light. If you haven't solved it, you've at least got it looked at from a different perspective.
Right.
Keith, do you ever dream?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes I do. So I don't remember a lot of them, though. I mean, I'm sure I'm probably one of those people, you know, you dream every time you go to sleep, but you know, sometimes you remember and sometimes you don't. I don't remember mine.
I found that if I don't recall it almost immediately when I get up, later in the morning, I will not remember any of the details.
That is true.
She actually advises that you keep a dream journal, that you keep a notepad by your bed. And when you wake from a dream, write down some memories from it, because that will help you rebuild it later on. And in fact, that's important. Go ahead.
Yeah. I have to share this. You know, you and Keith both know well that I lost Fanny after 57 years, over a year ago now. But it's interesting to me that in many of my dreams, she is there. We are there together experiencing something in a dream. Now, they've all been good. They've all been good memories that I share. It's an interesting thing to me. Over the years, I've dreamt so many times about this one particular house, and it's a house I've never been in. I don't have a clue but it's always the same very large house with lots of rooms. And when I dream about that house, she's there with me. So it's a comforting thing that's happening to me just after I've lost Fanny. So it sort of makes you want to go to bed and sleep. In other words, you enjoy your rest when your dreams are pleasant.
Yeah, that's a beautiful observation. I want Deirdre to see this video cast and hear that, and I'm sure she would have reinforcing information for you in all of it.
She could tell me why it's happening. I don't have a clue why, except I miss Fanny.
That's why she was on Dr. Phil when she was asked to analyze a dream, and she had an interesting take on it. But she's very, very positive about the dream experience, even when it's a negative experience. And she has become known worldwide, travels worldwide to work with people involved in stressful situations, in particular veterans and PTSD. She consults on that. She strongly advises veterans who have bad nightmares of their experience to record what they dream, and then to try to learn to reshape the dream, to think it through in the daylight hours and reshape the dream. And she's had incredible success with that. Deirdre shared a picture of her dreams. They are much more vivid than mine. I found them a little bit scary. She doesn't find them scary at all, right? So there must be something to that. And in fact, she now has posted a lot of the pictures from her dreams and has had them in art shows, juried art shows, and won awards for them. So, this different biochemical state that she talks about really is a fascinating subject. I talked to her roughly 18 months ago, I think now, at the end of the biggest part of the COVID scare, and, was just simply checking on my alumni. And I asked her, Deirdre, what is your next book about? And she said, I hope that I can write a book on COVID dreams.
Wow.
Yeah. And she did
goodness.
intimate that different people's response in dreams was the interest, the theme she wanted to pursue. She's still at Harvard Medical School, as I believe it plays out now. She, most of these kids, even though they're in the 70s and fully capable of retirement, should they want to choose it, don't give up their passion. And I think that's the same for Deirdre. Okay, so let's move to 1973 and Jim Pollock. Jim was the son of the music man, Bill Pollock. Now, you guys know who I'm talking about, right?
Yes, yes, we do.
Yeah, he was, as Dick Smizer, the Oak Ridger editor, once said, the Mr. Social Life of Oak Ridge, of early Oak Ridge, because he organized a lot of dances in the recreation halls and on tennis courts. And, he was just the expert on all things musical. He ultimately opened the Music Box, which was a favorite store of Oak Ridgers in the 50s and the 60s, when they went in there to buy records, vinyls is what I'm talking about. Especially Oak Ridge High School kids hung out there. It was on the corner in Jackson Square at the time. Jimmy, I called him Jimmy, worked in the electronics department of his dad's store, and he loved it. He was an electronics geek. I say that respectfully. So Jimmy went on to enormous fame as an engineer, graduating from MIT with a specialty in control systems. And little did we know at that time that it shapes our lives. You'll hear before I get through how it does. But he reached back to praise his Jefferson Junior High, we had junior highs back then, English teacher, Irma Neff, who was a legend. I'm going to quote what Jimmy said. She took a subject I didn't care about, English, required that I write daily, and made me get used to enjoying it. She was especially effective in teaching me to translate between different levels of complexity. In later engineering project management, my work required that I communicate user needs into project design, manage the engineering process, and translate results to customers. These communication skills are often considered the bane of an engineer's job.
Oh, how about that? Gave her credit for that.
Yeah.
One more comment about his father, Bill. he has left his records, his collection, huge collection, to the folks at the Historical Society, Oak Ridge Heritage and Preservation Association, and the
Wow.
Oak Ridge History Museum. So we
Wow.
have a wonderful collection that he created, and with his wired music system, Keith,
Mm,
that he would play at the tennis courts, and
yeah.
he really was the entertainment center of early Oak Ridge.
Yeah. You know, Jimmy recalls helping his dad because dances continued with the Fabulous 40s groups, etc., into his young lifetime. And he recalls string and wire, right, to the tennis courts and whatever to set those up. So that collection is
And
not only wonderful, but it's probably also priceless.
yes,
Um,
you're exactly right.
yeah.
Also, I might mention those dances are coming, or well, have come back.
Yeah.
The Manhattan Project National Historical Park holds dances on those tennis courts all through the summer. And they're beginning to get ready and plan for them this year. So
right.
if you want to experience something like the early Oak Ridgers did, it'll be happening on the tennis courts near Jackson Square later this summer.
Yeah, women need to pull out their swing skirts, right? He was big band swing music. Yeah. So Jimmy has an incredible story, an absolutely incredible story from Oak Ridge High School. He was a student of Barry Fernandez in the computer science class offered through Oak Ridge High School. And he also attended National Science Foundation summer camps in computer science. Now we're talking about early 1970s. He graduated in 73, right? So his Oak Ridge High School class had an IBM 1620 computer, which is probably less capable than handheld calculators are today, but it was programmable and it was his love, his absolute love. He described that computer as a Volkswagen-sized machine, right, sitting in an air-conditioned room, the only air-conditioned room at Oak Ridge High School. No wonder he wanted to take it. We all teachers wanted to take it. Jimmy, in 1972, wrote a computer football scouting report. And it was a program that provided powerful analysis, as he describes it, of gameplay tendencies of opposing teams. Coach Emory Hale, I'm quoting him now, ran the sidelines with a multi-page roll of computer papers in his back pocket. If you see pictures of Coach Hale, you'll see that multi-page roll packet. I thrilled when he pulled them out. I was later presented with a special one-of-a-kind computer letter, much like the football letters, but it had a little computer emblem on it, given to all players. Also, I wrote a similar basketball program. But the interesting caveat to this story, which I learned later from athletic director at the time, I believe he was not at Jimmy's time, but later appointed the athletic director. He got a visit from lawyers in the late 1970s, representing a company that approached him about intellectual piracy, claiming that Oak Ridge was using their computer scouting program. And Jim asked them, well, when did you copyright yours? And they mentioned sometime in the mid-70s, well after Jim had left Oak Ridge High School. And Jim Helton could document that, no, Jim Pollock wrote this in 1972.
Wow.
How about that? Before they ever copyrighted theirs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that part of the secret of the great coach, Emory Hale, was the IBM 1620 computer at Oak Ridge High School. So as a career, when I gave this presentation, I said, how has Jim touched your life? Right? Well, here's a few of the things he has been instrumental in developing. anti-lock brake system designs, simulated flight programs, missile guidance programs, to name a few. And
Wow.
he's still consulting in innovative projects through the University of Colorado and a big think tank there. Some of his emphasis has been on global farming issues and healthcare products, innovative new healthcare products, not limited to those two alone, but those are two he mentioned. So that's Jim Pollock.
All right.
We're going to 1973, and you are seeing a picture of the senior year for Joel Buchanan, 1973. Turns out that Joel and Jim, who I just covered, Jimmy, were best friends. And so they took their computer savvy to their academics and created, one example, a German class project for Frau Armstrong, the German teacher, the legendary German teacher. It was an elementary language translation computer program, English to German and vice versa. And that was an initiated project of their own, but one that now is common, right? You can do that kind of translation now with your phone. Joel enjoyed the experience of being a host brother to an AFS student, American Field Service student from Turkey, during his senior year. And that student I have written a story on because Joel reunited us just within the last year, 50 years after he was in my classroom. That student's name is Zafer Malaguer, and it will run sometime soon, right, Ray?
Yes, it is in the queue and should come up in the next few weeks.
All right, good. Zafer has an interesting story as well. So Joel was greatly swayed by his AP biology experience under legendary teacher Joe Henderson at Oak Ridge High School, so much so that he chose to major in biomedical engineering at Duke. But an interesting preface to that story, and the way the end of his career has turned out as well, is that he was also an electronics geek, like his friend Jimmy. And so Joel became a licensed ham operator in his early teens, which is very, very unusual, because to become a licensed ham operator required a lot of certifications, exams to pass, whatever. But with that experience and his own innovations, like at summer camp in North Carolina, he rigged up a system using his ham operator where kids could talk to their parents at home. Don't think anything about that today, but that was a big deal back in the early 70s. And with that experience, he later applied for and became the Duke University radio station's student general manager. They had shut it down before Joel arrived, but once he arrived, they revived it and he ran it. He was selected a presidential scholar at Duke and studied at Oxford for a semester. And he said, when I went to Oxford thinking that I wanted a medical career and that I wanted a strong medical program, I needed to diversify my talents. I needed to have more than just science and technical issues on my resume. So he took multiple courses in British literature. And it worked because he got the med school he wanted. He went on to Vanderbilt and did his residency and internships at the University of Wisconsin. His specialty was internal medicine at the time, but when he came out, he had to practice in Maryland because his wife, who was also a doctor, was working off a government-funded loan and was assigned to rural Maryland. So Joel took his certifications in internal medicine, found out that area was a very difficult job area, and instead had to accept an emergency room appointment out of Annapolis. That emergency room appointment became a big part of his career, almost half of his career. Some of it spent in Maryland and the rest of it at the University of Wisconsin, et cetera. But he also held on to his passion for electronics, et cetera. So he added the IT position, the IT director, during his time at Wisconsin, and that's now his major emphasis in retirement. He has initiated a tech plan that offers problem-oriented auto summaries of medical records for doctors, using electronic health records and employing filters to sort massive electronic health record databases. This sort that he does is based on a patient's currently diagnosed condition, and the filters sort through medications, lab work, images, procedures, clinical notes, and hospitalizations. He said it is not unusual for a patient to have as many as 40,000 records in a file. There's no way a doctor sitting in a room can see all of that. And so the sort is to make it easier for the doctor. I also wanted to read something else that he wrote that I put in my story. In a profile of Joel's work, he's doing that with the Isthmus Project at the University of Wisconsin, which is an accelerator program a program that tries to bring these new ideas to the forefront. A case is made for additional professional support in what he's doing. Included in the report is the following. It is the hidden side of electronic health records. Research shows that the average ER physician makes a mind-numbing 4,000 clicks per shift, spending nearly twice as much time on electronic record keeping than they do directly working with patients. And I just lost my place here. And clocking 1 to 2 hours of additional computer time after work to keep up with it all. And that is an online research paper called Technology Solutions Aims to Extinguish Provider Burnout through the Isthmus Project. So Joel has had a passion not only for medicine, he did work in internal medicine. He was a professor at the University of Wisconsin for medical students. He's kept up with his love of technology. He keeps himself updated, and in what he calls semi-retirement, he is now working to put together this problem-solving aid for doctors. That's Joel.
Wow.
It's amazing. Sure is. All right.
All right. Joel's brother, Steve, graduated from Oak Ridge High School 2 years later. And I should say something now that the second picture has come up. The Buchanan family is iconic Oak Ridge. Both of their parents were scientists, noted scientists certainly, but they were also artistic. They have published books, incredible camera work that they've done, camera pictures in those books. They were quite active in the city of Oak Ridge. So they had 2 sons, Joel and Steve. I used to call him Stephen, so forgive me if I lapse into that. And Stephen took a totally different route. He felt that he would be in science. That's what his family did, but he found himself going a different way. But when I asked Stephen to recall memories from Oak Ridge, from the schools in particular, he said, I've just learned about the Scarborough 85, and I didn't realize that I was a part of some really important history in Oak Ridge. So what he remembered was a fourth grade play date exchange with a student from Scarborough who would be transferring to his school the next year. We visited each other in our homes. It was great. So there was a second desegregation of Oak Ridge schools for all grades K. Well, actually, they started preschool at the time, preschool through 6. That happened in his young lifetime, right? In his early grades, 4th grade. And
that would have been in the 60s, early 60s.
Yeah. And he remembered, he remembered that quite well. And I was so struck that initiative to desegregate was part of a civil rights project from the 60s, and that Mary Elizabeth Alexander was the person who designed a lot of those programs. We featured Mary Elizabeth Alexander in the last video cast, iconic educator for 39 years in the Oak Ridge schools. And when I told Mary Elizabeth Alexander about this, she just smiled and said, "It worked, didn't it? It worked." Right. I'm sorry, back to Steve. He loved combined studies, and mentioned in particular Catherine Ledgerwood and Jean Pickle, who were the innovators in that program. And he loved the summer trips that they sponsored. There were a lot of those in the 60s and the 70s. In particular, his trip toured Italy, Greece, Israel, and Turkey. And he loved going to Turkey because he could reunite with his AFS brother, Zafer, from Turkey. He also did a domestic American Field Service exchange to New York City, right? Domestic meant that he went to a New York suburb for a visit, and the return visit to Oak Ridge from the New Yorkers. And he saw his first Broadway play, which was Grease. He said, "I knew then I would return," and he has. He's in New York, and he is producing in the entertainment venue. He started in engineering at Vanderbilt because he thought, that's what I need to do. I need to do science. But he said, I made one really interesting, I don't know that he called it a gamble, I can't remember, but I took one interesting risk. I decided, along with my roommate, to sign up for the concert committee. And he calls that my vocational school experience. So why? It was ultimately his future. He worked as a talent agent for 2 years after Vanderbilt, because he met so many interesting music artists in his time working on that concert committee. He got really intrigued with the whole business and decided, I'm just going to try this out and see what I think of working in the entertainment business. Well, it was his niche. It was definitely his niche. So after those 2 years working as a talent agent, after graduating with his undergraduate from Vanderbilt, he decided to go back and get a master's in business administration. And the sky's been the limit ever since. He ultimately ended up at Gaylord Entertainment, and among his many purviews were what he summarized as 4, in particular, the Grand Ole Opry, the Ryman Auditorium. He was key to reinvigorating that venue and bringing it up to newer standards, which was needed. He also worked with Nashville Country Radio and TV stations in the Nashville area, and he was responsible for the Hee Haw archives. He mentioned some special projects he did, and I actually decided to look those up and read those to you. Steve's job description was fluid through his years with Gaylord Entertainment. He was appointed the general manager of the Ryman Auditorium in 1993 as he oversaw the $8.5 million renovation and reopening in 1994. In 1998, he was appointed president of the Opry Entertainment Group, a job he held until 2018. He executive produced special musical performances such as Always, Patsy Cline, and Bye Bye Love, the Everly Brothers musical. His theatrical resume expanded to the Dallas Theater in 2015, where he led the production of Moonshine, the Hee Haw musical. And that's what he's doing now. He's producing more shows. But to go back and catch up a little bit more on some of the things he's been asked to do, President Bush asked him in 1990 to create an Opry show for the 1990 G7 summit. One catch. He had to put that show on in the big rodeo arena in Houston. And he said it was a logistics nightmare, but a huge hit. Margaret Thatcher in particular loved Minnie Pearl. Do you remember those names, guys?
Yeah, I do.
And
that's amazing. He's been right in the middle of some really interesting things that have happened in that creative world.
He's walked among the greats, definitely, in country music. He also was asked by President Obama to do an Opry performance at the White House, along with some other activities. And Obama, he was surprised, would be interested in country music, but Obama was interested in all kinds of music being performed at the White House. And Obama especially loved that Charlie Pride was there. He is most recently acclaimed for his TV series Nashville, which he conceived and produced and was very, very successful for its 7-year, I believe it was, run, right? And of course you can see Nashville still on reruns. So Steve went to the arts, Joel to medicine. Interesting, contrast between the two, but not surprising when you consider the Buchanan parent history.
I might add that there's a series in Historically Speaking about those parents. I worked with them I think it's a 3-part series that we wrote about their most interesting life, not just in the scientific arena. Jane's first book that she published was about early ends in East Tennessee.
Yeah.
A very nice book.
Beautiful
about
book.
Very beautiful book. And they had a lot of art in their house. Their home was decorated. And their home even had a fallout shelter, one of the fallout shelters in Oak Ridge as an example. But anyway, there is more information about them in Historically Speaking archives.
Ray, this pause helped me remember there's one more story on Steve I must tell. He was well known for this and well loved for this in Nashville. It was in 2010 during the devastating Nashville flood, which impacted areas of Nashville along the Cumberland River banks. And unfortunately, that's where the newer Grand Ole Opry House stage was, in the flood zone. The stage and the first floor auditorium were submerged. A lot of damage. At the onset of the flood, Steve and others of his staff crossed a flood wall, walking in wading boots to get to the Opry House. He said they worked quickly to move items from the Opry Museum as well as tape archives to safer heights. Plus, they pulled up the old Ryman Auditorium boards that were in a circular mid-stage position to save those. As we worked, I'm quoting Steve now, as we worked, we could see through the glass doors that the water was rapidly rising. We subsequently had to be evacuated via a flat bottom boat.
Hmm.
Oh, my. But he preserved those artifacts
Yes.
and that special flooring. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, a surprise flood that did major damage.
Oh yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
All right, we got time for Kai-Fu Lee.
Yes, let's do Kai Fu Lee.
Okay. Kai-Fu started at St. Mary's School in the 5th grade. He came here, his father was assigned to some sort of diplomatic post in America, but his father wanted him to be in a smaller a smaller community. And so he brought Kai-Fu to Oak Ridge, where Kai-Fu's brother lived and worked at the time. And the decision was made to put him at St. Mary's because it was a smaller school, and he had poor English skills at the time. And in fact, St. Mary's and the head of the school worked very diligently with Kai-Fu. He praises them profusely for their work. He did then later enroll in Jefferson Junior High in the 9th grade. His math was so highly accelerated that he finished all the Oak Ridge High School math offerings by the end of his sophomore year. So in the 11th grade, we had to provide some mathematics for him, and I got approval for Kai-Fu plus 2 other students, I believe, that year to travel with me to my night school sophomore level calculus course at the University of Tennessee, where he and his friends received college credit. He was rejected, unfortunately, by the major Ivy schools. He was absolutely heartbroken, and he felt it was because his English score just had not met their mark, whatever it was. I remember telling him at the time, I believe they will regret turning him down, and you'll see why. He went to Columbia. He was first in his class in computer science. He went thinking he would be a math major, but he got pulled in by the computer science offerings they had. So he is a combination mathematician, computer scientist. And one interesting side note, he remembers sharing a classroom with Barack Obama, later President Obama, although he did not know him. When he exited Columbia, he chose Carnegie Mellon, which was the ground floor best program in America at the time, to get a PhD. He did his dissertation on digital speech recognition. His doctoral paper was recognized by Business Magazine as the most important scientific invention of 1989. This is before he became corporate, right? He's recognized. He is now known as the father of Siri. Siri spelled S-I-R-I. We all know Siri.
We talk to her often.
Yeah, right. At Apple, which he went to next, he worked with Google Earth, iTunes, Online Egos, later called Avatars, QuickDraw 3D. He became a vice president at age 33, unheard of.
Yes.
Microsoft then set him up to create a Microsoft Research Center in China, which he did before moving to Google China as the president. And there was some controversy there because it was considered intellectual piracy again for him to move from Microsoft to Google. Mm-hmm. He became the founder and president of a company called Sinovation, and as far as I know, that's still his company. He's an angel investor, a sponsor of new innovative tech projects. and lives in China. His honors include, I will never forget sitting down in my eye doctor's office and picking up one of the magazines there. It was a 2013 Time magazine, flipped it open. Kai-Fu was one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2013. Quite a recognition. He's considered a world expert on artificial intelligence, has authored the bestseller AI Superpowers, which has been out for a while. And he just finished sometime, 2021, the book AI, Artificial Intelligence 2041. It's a collection of 10 scenarios from life on how AI will look 20 years from now. And it's absolutely breathtaking to read.
I have both his books, and I agree with you. That one is astounding to think about
Yes.
what the future may hold for us.
Yes, yes. And what's already been done that I wasn't even aware of, right? What's already accomplished. But by 2041, wow, the world will be very different. I want to close this one off by mentioning that Kai-Fu is the most generous person with his time, with his consults with people. He came to Oak Ridge, visited Oak Ridge as a guest of the Oak Ridge Public Schools Education Foundation, and accepted as a part of that talks with students at both Jefferson and St. Mary's and at Oak Ridge High School. And I was privileged to attend that Oak Ridge High School talk. He had a really tight schedule that day, and so he was scheduled for an hour. The school, the entire school came to see him during that presentation. And of course, he's showing exactly what the kids love, all kinds of gee whiz technology. But we were running tight on schedule. And once the program was over, we needed to rush him to a car to get him to his next appointment. And the kids would not let him go. The kids had hundreds of questions. And finally, we started walking Kai-Fu to his car with kids literally hanging on him, just absolutely a Pied Piper experience, if you please. Kai-Fu loved every minute of it, loved their questions. All right.
That's amazing. I agree with you that Kai-Fu Lee, he introduced Google into China. And of course, you know, all of us now, if we want to know anything, we just ask Google. And I'm amazed that you don't even have to spell it right. It knows how to get what you're wanting, and it puts it up on the first page, Keith. I mean, almost always you find, find what you want almost immediately. And Kai-Fu Lee's the reason we're doing that.
And Google is a leader in AI technology. 60 Minutes just did a whole segment about Google and artificial intelligence, and I've incorporated talks about Chat GPT and GPT-4 and all those kinds of things, because the artificial intelligence is moving so fast and can do so many things, especially in my industry with audio and video production. It's, you know, you can do a prompt now and it will create a video for you, you know, so it's pretty amazing. And I'm sure he's been in the forefront of that his whole career. So
now I must tell you, I'm a judge for History Day competitions, Benita. I did judge the one for the Tennessee State competition just last week down in Nashville, and I judged documentary films. One of the competing films this year had the history of artificial intelligence as its theme. Went back to the very beginning and brought it up and even projected what they think the future might look. It won. It's the #1 documentary for senior high in Tennessee and is going to national competition.
Wow.
A really done piece on artificial intelligence. Now, at the end, we judges have an opportunity, as we're reviewing what they do, we have an opportunity to make suggestions that they might consider as they prepare for the next competition. I introduced them to Kai-Fu Lee and to his work. So I hope they'll include that as an addition to what they've already done, significant research in the history of artificial intelligence. So I'm proud that they were in that.
Yeah, I am sure Kai-Fu would be honored. He's a very humble man. And let me say one more thing for those people who don't want to hear about AI taking over our life, which it seems it could, right? Kai-Fu said, yeah, there will be job changes, right? Jobs will be replaced. Keith, my goodness, if it makes videos, is that your passion replaced?
Well, I'm about to retire, so you know, it doesn't really matter to me, but it matters to the younger folks. I mean, you know, it's kind of like, and I look at this kind of like back when desktop computers came out, and you know, it was like, well, I've got PageMaker, I can create a brochure. Sure, you've got the tools to do that, but it takes more than the tools. It takes the creative vision of the human spirit to be able to do those things and do them properly. And I think that's going to be the confluence between AI and human creativity. I think there's a really great opportunity for AI to aid us in storytelling. And but I'm you know, I think it's going to be a long time. I won't be here when it takes over. I don't think.
What it does is it removes the mundane, the things that are routine, that you know, Keith, it lets us focus more on the creativity if we don't have to worry about all the keyboarding. You know what I'm saying? It can be beneficial to us that way.
That is true.
That's exactly what Kai-Fu said. So Keith, a profound observation. You know, he also said that the emotions, loving, caring relationships, right? Anything having to do with that, AI can't replace, right? Exactly. It's just that job demand may change, as Ray said, in some of the more mundane or routine areas. Yes.
And you know, and the skill set that we all have. Of course, you know, anybody that's in technology anyway, every 5 years you have to practically learn something brand new on how things are done. And this is just going to be another one of those things that we just have to learn a new skill set and learn a new way of operating to be able to produce the things that we produce. So that's just my thoughts.
But, all right.
Okay.
All right.
Well, good. Now, and we'll complete this and that. Well, I hope we will. If we don't complete it, we'll run it into 4 sessions. It's okay. It's so rich and so good, Benita. What you've done is just tremendous. And I might add, I think I have convinced her that she needs to write a book about these stories that she's created for historically speaking. And I'm so glad to have them in our local newspaper on historically speaking. And those archives are available if anyone wants to look up 15 years of historically speaking. If you'll just put my name and historically speaking in Google, the artificial intelligence knows exactly how to go to my archive.
They'll find it. They'll find it. All right. Well, we'll be back. Thank you, Benita. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with part number 3. And I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
I am too.
All right. Very good. Thanks for watching, folks. We appreciate it.